It is Friday, my dudes.
Okay, I'll admit it, Friday the 13th was sort of a disappointment for me. I heard a lot about the series and knew not to expect much from it, especially since director Sean S. Cunningham and writer Victor Miller have fully admitted to, on several occasions, making the flick a blatant ripoff of Carpenter's Halloween.
And Sean called me up and said, Halloween is making incredible money at the box office, let's rip it off.
I didn't expect Friday the 13th to age very well, but I did expect it to be somewhat suspenseful, sort of like Carpenter's Halloween. That's what I got from Halloween. It wasn't scary to me, it was suspenseful. I'll be reviewing the entire Friday the 13th series. But anyway, review number 1. Friday the 13th, part 1 of 12, 1980, a financially successful staple. The year is 1958. Campers are singing and having a good time. And meanwhile, I guess the killer, based on the music, is lurking through the cabins watching people sleep. It seems that there's only 2 camp counselors on site, and they leave their campers to have sex in another room where their screams won't be heard. Makes sense.
Does Marianne kiss as big as I do?
How would I?
Oh, you.
Already, I'm noticing major quality issues. I understand it's a low-budget ripoff, but if I can hear your actor's footsteps more than I can hear legitimate dialogue, there's a problem. To give credit where credit's due, Carpenter's Halloween thought sex lasted 15 seconds, and at least in this movie, they don't even have their clothes off. If it was Halloween, they'd already be done by the time they're interrupted. But what is this editing? Like, it freeze frames on a shot where the girl just looks like she's, like, laughing almost. I don't know, a cut to black maybe?
Just call me angel of the morning, angel.
Okay, I know I'm nitpicking a little bit, but what is the present? Like, and that isn't really a complaint for Friday the 13th as much as it is just a complaint for movies that just say present day, no matter like what, year it's actually made in. Like, I know that's what they're meaning, like 1980 or something, but like, is our best guess saying that it was like 22 years ago? Okay, well, 22 years later, assuming aspiring camp counselor Annie comes into town on foot, and I'm serious when I say this, she's the best character in the whole movie. I mean that wholeheartedly. I like her. She's very charismatic. She's very, open, kind of like happy-go-lucky, but not dumb.
Hi, girl. Excuse me. Hi, boy. Hey, you speak English? How far is it to Camp Crystal Lake?
Like, she puts herself in dumb situations, but I don't know. She's a polite person, and she's not just gonna like shrug someone off if they're trying to help her. And so, that being said, I'm legitimately would be sad if she died.
All the girls up there gonna look as good as you?
I don't know.
You're good at Camp Blood, ain't you? God damn it, Ralph, get out of here.
Meanwhile, yeah, let's talk about Ralph. Ralph is different. He's that well-dressed bicycle-riding town crazy. He just appears in one scene and warns Annie that Crystal Lake has a death curse.
It's got a death curse.
And this is dismissed as crazy by the truck driver that offers her a ride.
He's a real prophet of doom, ain't he?
Even though he dismisses the notion of a death curse as crazy, not even 1 minute later in the film, the truck driver tells Annie that the whole camp is jinxed.
Camp Crystal Lake is jinxed.
What? If you were going to warn her to not go to Crystal Lake, why did you dismiss Ralph as crazy? And why did you still drive her there?
An American original.
Anyway, here's what the kids are listening to today. Here we have Kevin Bacon, this bimbo, and the comic relief. I guess that Annie hiked into town because she has no friends or family. Kevin Bacon is nothing memorable in this movie. The bimbo never wears a bra unless she's in a bikini, and the comic relief really isn't that funny. He's more of like that frat boy you wish would just have one more drink so he could pass out already. They get to camp and we're introduced to Alice and... I had to look up his name, but Steve. Attempts at character development ensue between them.
When did you do this?
Last night,
Do I really look like that?
you did last night.
The music had to evoke and point out the fact that the killer was there. It wasn't just the camera shooting, it was the POV of the killer.
If that's supposed to be a POV, how the hell did Alice not see the killer? Anyway, Steve drives into town, leaving the kids to work on the campsite.
I'll be back sometime after lunch.
Meanwhile, Annie gets another ride, this time in a Jeep. They pass Crystal Lake, and in a panic, Annie jumps out of the car, runs into the woods, and is killed. So, from the killer's perspective here, they overhear Alice say that their cook hasn't made it yet.
The others show up?
Yeah, everybody except that girl who's supposed to handle the kitchen, Annie.
So, this person just gets in their car and drives around the area, assuming that the missing camp counselor is hitchhiking, then picks up Annie, which may potentially be a random person, and kills her. Anyway, here's teenage girls in bikinis. Attempts at character development ensue between them.
Now, if you were a flavor of ice cream, what would it be?
Rock and roll.
Hey!
And I guess Annie was closer to camp than we thought. Filler scene, fake drowning. Filler scene, snake killing. Filler scene, cop arrives. Actually, why is the cop here? I mean, he says he's here to look for Ralph because he gets drunk and tells people about Crystal Lake, but people in town didn't even know it was opening up. And why would Ralph even be here if he thinks it has a death curse and he's in the pantry? Waiting there, hoping someone opens the door. I'm glad that happened. Okay, that cop would have definitely seen Ralph's bike if it was just sitting right there. Alice tries to turn on a light in an already lit room, so a group goes over to turn on the generator. Kevin Bacon and the bimbo's romance blossoms as the comic relief wanders to his death. Sex happens and...
Sex, die. You don't have sex, die. That's the premise. That's the underlying theme, going through the Friday the 13th movie.
An axe to the face and a harpoon to the neck. The effects in this movie are horrendous. Every time a body part bleeds, the skin is gray. And they just had to rip off Psycho.
Sean was very insistent that we borrow from Hitchcock.
It's the cringiest scene of the movie. Then they claimed that the light hitting was done to actually serve a purpose.
When you see the axe make contact with the light, that was completely Tom's idea. Make the audience realize that this axe is a real axe that has substance to it.
Before that, the comic relief's body is shown on the top bunk while they're doing it, and it makes no sense. Did the killer drag the kid's body across camp in broad daylight before it started raining? He had to have. There's no way that could have gone unnoticed without someone seeing. I mean, no one's had alcohol yet. In the other cabin, Alice and, the Professor and Mary Ann play strip Monopoly. Because they're teenagers.
Oh, I think I left the windows in my cabin open.
An excuse is made, and wearing only her underwear and a raincoat, Mary Ann rushes back to her cabin alone, leaving Alice and the professor to clean up.
No.
We catch up on Steve, that lying
I'll be back sometime after lunch.
Leaving the kids to tend to the camp by themselves while he sips coffee all day at the diner from Superman 2. Okay, Mary Ann made it to the bathroom. Okay, she said she'd make it to her, room, but okay. Eventually she makes it back, walks outside to investigate that strange noise, and... distant scream? Is she dead at that point, or just... what? We don't see her die. Alice and the professor go out to look for Mary Ann and find an axe covered in blood instead. They look around everywhere and finally decide to call someone. To me, the best shot in the film is the tracking shot of the lines being cut. I thought it was really creative how they showed that, you know, while you're just hearing their dialogue, it just pans over. Good job. Anyway, when the phones don't work, they try a car. And when that doesn't work, the professor says screw it, and they call it quits and wait for Steve. And Steve attempts to get back home and gets the Jeep stuck, so he hikes back in and gets killed almost instantly.
Oh, hi.
Then the professor decides to check on the generator alone, so technically only Alice remains. Filler scene, Alice makes coffee. Alice decides to look for the professor since he's been gone God knows how long. And then bodies turn up. Almost exactly the same way bodies turned up in Halloween. Alice panics, boarding up the door, and then a body is thrown through the window like Rorschach did to that pedophilic rapist murderer. Then Alice deboards the door. A car pulls up and, oh boy, it's the killer. Can you teleport? Are you telling me this woman killed the remaining camp counselors, threw one of them through a window, ran up the top of the hill, drove the Jeep down the hill, all to just temporarily fool Alice? Why her? Why not just kill her like you did the other kids? Anyway, Mrs. Voorhees is here, and ready to get on her soapbox for why she did it all. To save other children from the same fate as her son Jason.
Did you know that a young boy drowned? The counselors weren't paying any attention. They were making love while that young boy drowned.
She's killing camp counselors, especially ones that already demonstrated that they would save potential kids from drowning. And because of that, suddenly the movie means something. Like, when you look through, like, special features and stuff, the makers of the film, the writers, and the actors all, like, defend this to the nth degree. Like, suddenly, like, the mother is, like, you know, like, a hero figure of sorts. Like, yeah, you kill those kids. You have every right to do so. It's justified.
Had every reason to keep a camp closed because otherwise somebody else's son would drown.
She lost her son, Jason. All the camp counselors were fooling around.
So I can clearly identify with Betsy Palmer.
And that's all she was doing, was making sure that that never happened to another mother ever again.
This woman offed 7 teenagers to commemorate her son's birthday, and you're okay with that logic? Then this reverse psycho thing happens. Instead of the mother being in the son's head, the son is in the mother's head.
Kill her, Mommy. Kill her.
I basically reversed Tony Perkins and his mother.
But not just memory, she has conversations with herself as if she's both talking to her son and is her son at the same time.
Don't let her live.
I won't, Jason. I won't.
Anyway, stuff happens, and we're just going to skip to the beach scene where they partake in the most awkward fight sequence I've seen in quite some time. It ends in one swinging of a machete to full decapitation. Mrs. Voorhees holds her hands up, waving them around like she's a headless chicken. I'm no expert, but I'm not even going to say it. In the film's final act, it rips off Carrie.
They really didn't have an ending, and I had just seen Carrie. Clearly remember that, if it's a dream, you can get away with anything.
You can call it an homage, I call it a theft.
Like, I didn't believe for a second. I don't even think that's just 1980s thing. I just think it didn't work. Alice wakes up in a hospital and the attack on the canoe was all a dream. That just looked at the camera. Alice is really confused by the whole situation because she asks if Jason, a boy that's been dead well over 20 years, is actually dead.
The boy. Is he dead too?
Who?
The boy, Jason.
Which may be a valid question because I have more reviews to do than fingers on me.
Ma'am, we didn't find any boy.
Then he's still there.
final thoughts, I'll put it to you this way. Friday the 13th was released the same month as The Shining, May of 1980. The Shining made $622,000 its opening weekend. Friday the 13th made $5.8 million its opening weekend. Both films were nominated for Worst Picture and Worst Actress at the Razzies. The Shining is one of my favorite films of all time, and it's an absolute insult that this film is equated to it. So, on the movie itself, it's enjoyable at the very least. I had a good time watching it, I had a good time reviewing it, but this is not by any means a good movie. It was overly simplistic, and it still didn't make sense at times. Once the killer is revealed, and it's only one person, several plot holes develop. If it truly is scarier to have no motivation, why did Victor Miller try so hard on writing a motive for it? The characters, minus Ralph and maybe Annie, are all forgettable. It's not that I want them to die, it's that I don't care if they do or don't. There's a good 40 minutes before anyone at the camp is killed off, and I learned practically nothing about these people in that time. In one scene they attempt at character growth, and it's just boring and vague. The visual effects are trash, the score is hyped up way more than it should be, the acting is dull all around, but most of all, it's not even creepy. I didn't expect intense. I did expect some level of thrill, and I felt none. And I can be a sucker for jump scares at times. Okay, so here's what you should expect from this movie. Does it have a good story? No. Is it scary? No. Does it have good kills? Kind of. Yeah, it has a couple innovative things. I like the harpoon. Nudity? No, I don't think so. Character depth? They attempt at it. Filler? Absolutely. Humor? Some of it can be funny, depending on the day you view the movie. Unintentional humor? Yeah, some stuff is kind of cringy. So is it a horror classic? Yes. Should it be? Yes. It made slasher what it is today. Repetitive nonsense.
Another day has come and let you down. All of our yesterdays have gone.